The entertainment world is shocked by the death of actor Chadwick Boseman. Born in South Carolina and graduating from Howard University, he portrayed icons both real and imagined on the big screen. In 2013, as baseball pioneer Jackie Robinson in 42. A year later, in Get On Up as R&B legend James Brown. And in Marshall as the first African-American Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. But Boseman's breakthrough came in 2016 when he entered the Marvel Cinematic Universe as King T'Challa, the Black Panther.
I didn't have this growing up. I just know what it's going to mean to you when you see it, that it can give you a certain type of confidence when you walk through the world.
In 2018, he reprised the role in Black Panther and Avengers: Infinity War, the two top grossing films of the year. The Wakanda Forever salute became a worldwide sensation. Behind the scenes, he was raging a fierce battle with colon cancer. He'd kept his diagnosis from the public, acting and producing between numerous surgeries and chemotherapy. He succumbed to the disease Friday at age 43 as Major League Baseball celebrated Jackie Robinson Day. We remember actor Chadwick Boseman.
Black woman. Beautiful, powerful, resilient female of African descent with skin kissed by the sun. Conversation. A talk, especially an informal one, between two or more people in which news and ideas are exchanged. We love being Black women. Black women are ambitious. Black women are confident. Black women are diligent. We are tenacious. We walk out of our houses put together. We are many shades and personalities of fabulous. But we as Black women don't talk about our dilemmas, current events, and what's going on every day that affects us. So we created this podcast as a way to laugh together, cry together, and have an open conversation about life as Black women.
Oh, that's deep. Black Women Conversations.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Janine.
This morning, Nicole, before the podcast, I actually went to Starbucks to get us coffee. And in our Starbucks, it's not even the Starbucks parking lot. In the parking lot of the shopping center, there's a, I guess, weekly or bi-weekly, car club. And literally there were hundreds of cars and hundreds of car owners. And maybe I saw 5 masks. They, are potentially putting everybody else that they come in contact with at risk for spreading COVID. Let me tell you, there probably were about 300 people total that I saw. And when I tell you I might have seen 5 masks, I'm not even exaggerating a bit. And by 5, I might be being generous. And on the way home from Starbucks, just obviously that quickly, so I think I've been up for a couple hours. On the way home from Starbucks, I get a notification from CNN that says U.S. COVID-19 cases are climbing, but some states and local leaders clash over the moves to curb the spread. Clearly, our cases are climbing and people are taking it so much less seriously. I just don't understand. I have a best friend, as you know, Nicole, because I picked up the phone and called you panicking, that contracted COVID in an environment where she's not able to social distance. My best friend is in the military, and during her tour of duty, she contracted COVID. And subsequently, she has been having to be monitored, so on and so forth. But in her words, and from my knowledge of her and how particular she is, she's done everything. She wears her mask, she washes her hands. I mean, she washed her hands obsessively prior to COVID. She's, been wearing her mask. She actually had me get her mask before she even had to go out the house because she was so paranoid about COVID because of the people that she comes in contact with. She has parents that are older and, have pre-existing conditions and so on and so forth. So she did everything that she was supposed to do and still somehow contracted COVID. People don't quite understand it, I guess, because I don't quite understand it. And then also people are just, not necessarily erring on the side of caution. So, want to get into what's on our timeline?
Sure, girl. What's on your timeline?
And I picked this story specifically because of you, Nicole. So, recently, the CDC updated their website. And by updated, I mean this was not what initially was put out by the CDC to the United States about how to prevent and or what to look for during COVID. So their website was updated recently. And I say recently because we've been doing research about this, to my knowledge, at least since February, March in the United States, right? So within the past couple of weeks, the CDC updated their website to include pregnant women, stating that they could be at a higher risk. So the update specifically says people who are pregnant might be at an increased risk for severe illness for COVID-19. With that being said, initially, I'm assuming that, there was no research study. I'm not sure. I will, yield to you on that topic. But there was no solid evidence that pregnant women would be at a higher risk. Now, recently, they've shown that pregnant women are for sure at a higher risk for severe illness when pregnant. Bring it back to, Black and brown people. That means that Black women and brown women are at even higher risk for severe illness when pregnant. So I was reading an article on Yahoo News, and it specifically stated that Black and brown women are at an even higher risk because oftentimes they have forward-facing jobs that don't allow them to necessarily social distance or even take off during a pandemic. And then also, in addition to that, they are in situations where they might live more than 2 or 3 people in a house. It could be, 4 and 5, because oftentimes in Black and brown communities, as we know, we have extended families that live there. Like, for example, my parents live here, right? So in a situation like this, now granted, there are only, a few people in our house. However, you have to be cognizant of the fact that sometimes there are several generations, grandparents, parents, and children that live in the same house in Black and brown communities. It's not just in Black and brown communities, but as the data stated, it appears more in our communities. Now, the CDC has made acknowledgement, yes, that pregnant women are at higher risk, but then that elevates the risk for African American and Hispanic women, or any women of color that might face some already, pre-existing conditions, or what are they called? Comorbidities? Is that?
Yeah, comorbidities.
Comorbidities. So then subsequently now our risk has not increased, 10%, but it's now increasing exponentially. And then we find ourselves in a situation where we are now putting our family members at risk because this pandemic doesn't allow for us to take proper precautions and social distance and or, stay away from our family members while we, might have been for 14 days, at least from what I know, while we might have been exposed to COVID. So it's a huge thing. So now, as if we already didn't have enough things to worry about, we have to be concerned with our pregnant women and specifically our Black and brown pregnant women. Nicole?
We've been concerned about our pregnant women. We've been saying this. I'm an OBGYN. We have been saying this. We have been saying our pregnant women probably shouldn't go to work unless they can be 6 feet away from their coworker and unless they can be masked at all times. Now, the issue with pregnant women and masks, pregnant women already can't breathe, especially if you're in your 3rd trimester. You may have a hard time taking a deep breath because physiologically you don't have as much of a functional reserve capacity, or the amount of oxygen that you leave in your lungs after you exhale. You don't have as much of that in pregnancy as you do before pregnancy. That's just normal physiology of pregnancy. And so anytime you have a respiratory insult, whether you're a smoker, whether you have COPD, you're going to do a lot worse in pregnancy than if you were not pregnant. Same thing with the flu, because it's a respiratory insult. Now we got COVID, which is like this super duper respiratory insult. So of course, we've been saying that. Initially the CDC was like, oh, well, pregnant women, they're not contracting it at a higher rate than non-pregnant women. Well, there's not as many pregnant women as there are non-pregnant women. So we got to wait a little while to let the data come through to at least see, like, is it the same amount of, same level as a flu in pregnancy? Do we have those same rates? And so now we know that, yeah, pregnant women can be asymptomatic carriers, right? Usually if a pregnant woman gets the flu, they're not an asymptomatic carrier. They have either mild or severe symptoms, which is why we vaccinate everybody in pregnancy for the flu. With COVID, we have seen that there are people that are asymptomatic carriers. However, once they deliver, they tank on us because it still is an underlying pulmonary issue. So then after you deliver, you have this natural shifting of fluid that happens because your legs that were swollen, your blood volume doubles, that fluid has to go somewhere. So naturally, in anybody that's pregnant after they deliver, they have fluid shifts. So now you have an insult to your lungs with fluid shifting. Of course, you're going to get sick. So we've seen that people that are asymptomatic then become extremely symptomatic. And so those women do have a much higher rate of dying. So I'm glad that the CDC finally caught up. And that way it sort of backs us in approving these women not to go to work or to actually have some further precautions. But it's a shame it took this long. Thanks, CDC.
Thanks, the United States government. We appreciate you.
Well, to the CDC's point, they're not the United States government, right? They're funded by them, but they have been not in agreement with the United States government. They don't agree. So, and they've been trying to be politically correct in not agreeing. But it is an agency that's affiliated with the United States government. So yes, thanks.
Correct. I agree. And I'm sure that, to the CDC, I'm sure that you all are working extremely hard. And I'm sure that it does not make it easy that the current administration does not back your knowledge and expertise.
It's also a shame that for some reason this is a political issue and not just a public health issue, right? So the CDC's job could be a lot better if you didn't have, this party over here saying, oh, well, this is all a hoax. And then this party over here saying, no, it's not a hoax. This is the president's response and he was awful. And so now it's almost like if you agree with the president, you don't wear a mask. If you disagree with the president, then you wear a mask. I don't get that. Like, when does your safety in your life have to be political? Like, I'm not about to be a martyr for the president. I'm sorry. I ain't dying for the president.
Word. And the crazy part is it's almost like their allegiance to the president or certain people's allegiance to the president. It supersedes their common sense and it supersedes their personal safety. And it's like, really, guys? I mean, the president isn't going to come, make sure that you specifically in, some small town in the Midwest have a ventilator. I mean, we have real live issues that, on my timeline, I see articles from CNN, MSNBC. It's almost like every single publication, even publications that are not general news publications, you cannot avoid the data from, COVID-19. You cannot avoid it. So the truth of the matter is the data is there and people are just choosing to turn a blind eye to it.
Speaking of the data and us in our Black and brown communities, it's almost as if I wonder if white people were dying at the same rates, if it would be a bigger issue, right? Or if any other race was dying at a higher rate. And I hear that all the time from people in healthcare circles even that are talking about this. Like, are they okay because it's Black and brown people? Like I told you this week, I have been on call and I have seen 4 to 6 COVID patients that are new patients, but they have all been Black and brown. Actually, they've all been brown. They've all been Hispanic this week for some reason. There's a rage of Hispanics that are getting COVID-19. The last time I was on call, the COVID patients I saw were all Black. So I'm just wondering, like, why is it okay? We are the people on the front line. People say all the time, well, I don't understand how you could say Black people are on the front line. It's just that they're going out more or they're visiting their family more because they're social. No, we actually drive the buses and we work in the grocery store and we do a lot of these service jobs. So that makes us on the front lines. And it's hard when you have to choose between, do you go to work and provide for your family or do you stay home and be safe? So that's a really hard decision to make. I mean, I have to provide for mine and I'm working and this is what I signed up to do. But I'm just trying to think, if I were working at Kroger, would I still feel that same way that I had to go to work? I don't know.
That's actually really interesting. If then that goes back to what is a necessity? What is essential? I mean, yeah, it's pretty obvious that, as a physician, you're essential. If you all stop working, we all die. That's just how this works, right? I mean, if every physician quit, the moment you catch COVID, you're just on a steady decline, to my understanding of the disease. So, that is definitely essential. But then you have to really sit and break it down and say, we also have to eat. And we're not, our system is not set up for us to literally go outside and grow our food and raise our animals. So, we have to rely on a system that provides us with food. So those people are essential as well. It's not just the people that work at the, Kroger, as you mentioned, but it's also the man that drives the truck that transports the food to the Kroger so that we can then go get it. So, at this point, one, we're seeing what is essential and what's not. And then also we're seeing that much like any other healthcare healthcare issue. We see that our communities get hit harder. And why is that though, Nicole? Why are our communities getting hit harder with every, disease, it seems? Why is that?
Well, I mean, these highly contagious diseases, they're getting hit harder because, like what you said, you got several generations living in the same, in the same household, or they're dependent on each other. So, for example, I'm a doctor and I don't have a lot of people in my household, but my mom lives here. She's here to help. But even before she lived here, like, I needed to go help her. Like, we may have to pull together to go pay auntie's bills, or we may have to go and make sure that our grandmother is fed. We take care of our families regardless. And so if you're talking about something that's highly contagious, yes, we are making sure we're reaching back and we're taking care of our families more. And so we are in contact with them more. But then if you talk about health disparities, I mean, ooh, child, that is a systemic thing that goes from way back, right? So, the scraps, now chitlins is an aphrodisiac, right? So my husband and I went to Paris, the thing that was expensive on the menu were chitterlings, right? But that was the expensive thing on the menu. Like, that is like all the rave, but that is an animal belly. That is all fat. There's no real protein in that. But we had to take these leftover scraps way back in the day in slavery, and these traditions were passed down. So we took what we had to do. We made it taste uber good so that we could eat it. But that was fatty stuff. And so we grew up on fatty stuff. So when you have a low income area and you have to choose between whether you're going to buy a pack of chicken legs or chicken thighs versus a lean steak or versus kale or something, you're going to choose what you can feed a lot of people with. That happens to be higher in fat, which then puts you at higher risk for hypertension and diabetes.
Which then subsequently puts you at a higher risk for COVID-19.
Well, which then subsequently puts you at a higher risk for dying from COVID. Absolutely. Dying from COVID-19. Absolutely. Because a lot of people have underlying conditions that they don't even know about. They're finding out because they're hospitalized with COVID-19. You got people that are like, oh, I thought I was 40 years old and healthy. Actually, now I realize I have diabetes that was never diagnosed. I realize I have high blood pressure that was never diagnosed. Because some people don't go to the doctor every year. They don't.
Okay.
Well, let's talk through a scenario.
Let's go.
Now we're talking about COVID-19. I know we talked about pregnancy for the timeline, but let's say your husband had COVID-19. You live in the same house with your husband. Your husband is a truck driver. He goes back and forth to work. He caught COVID-19, right? Common story. What would you do? Would you stay in the house? What would you do?
Yikes, Nicole. So personally, yes, I would stay in the house. And I mean, I would take every precaution that I possibly. First of all, the first thing that I would probably do when I found out is pick up the phone and call you and say, Nicole, what do I do? Because whenever I have any sort of issue, whether it's related to your field of medicine or not, I pick up the phone and call you because I know that you're going to tell me the information. And if you don't tell me the right information, if you don't know the right information, or if you don't have enough knowledge to your standards, you will then look it up or call a friend, which will help me. So the first thing I would do is pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, Nicole, my husband has COVID. What do I do? But my first concern would be my husband is a diabetic. So Nicole, what do I do? My husband's a diabetic, and as we just discussed, he's at a higher risk for, a more severe case of COVID or not recovering from COVID. So help, right? But everyone doesn't have a friend, Nicole, right? So if I'm going off of my basic, civilian knowledge of what to do, I probably would social distance. Fortunately, we have other rooms in our house where I could sleep and would not have to sleep with my husband. I'm fortunate and I'm very well aware of that. But I would social distance. I would make sure that he was fed and taken care of. And, somehow I was taking his temperature. I would make sure that I wore an N95 and some sort of face shield because that's what I saw my friend Nicole do. Again, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I would, hopefully he would be able to get some sort of medical attention. I would not necessarily be too keen on him being admitted to the hospital because I feel like he would be exposed to, he would be at a higher risk of getting worse in the hospital because he would probably be placed on a COVID ward. But I would attempt to social distance and attempt to still take care of my husband while putting myself at risk. So, I took a vow for better or for worse. So I would have to take this as worse, in sickness and in health. I have to make sure that my husband is taken care of without, hopefully without putting myself at risk for catching COVID.
Okay. So let's talk through that. You said a lot. So you said you wouldn't be too keen on your husband being in hospital because he would be on a COVID ward. So what's wrong with the ward in the hospital that is for COVID patients? A lot of people think that. They don't want to go to the hospital. Why is that, Janine?
I don't want my husband. First of all, let me be clear. My husband is very healthy otherwise, right? So aside from being a diabetic, he's very, he doesn't go in for surgeries. Like, I've had more surgeries than him, so on and so forth. Picture of health, it's in between the two of us, he's the picture of health, right? So my stigma is that people catch, and maybe it's not a stigma. My thought process is that people are more susceptible to illness when they're around illness, and the hospital is nothing but illness, right? So I'm not 100% sure that exposing my husband to his fellow COVID patients supposedly is healthy or is the better of the two options. I would almost rather have some sort of like home health care, because at least I'm limiting the exposure that my husband could potentially be getting of other illnesses or of other, of a different level of COVID. I don't know how this disease works. And that's part of the issue that I'm having with, answering your question, because I am not clear on how it works. If my COVID comes in contact with someone else's COVID, could it potentially make both of our COVID worse? Or does it make me more immune? Do we even have data that shows that? So from my knowledge of health, I know that I've caught sepsis before from being in the hospital, right? So in my mind, I probably wouldn't have caught sepsis if I was home. So in my mind, that's how I view COVID. If my husband is in the hospital, he's more susceptible to have other things go wrong in the hospital. Whereas if he's at home exposed to his own germs and the germs that he's used to and his body is familiar with, then maybe he has a better chance of survival. I might be ignorant in that thought process, but that's how I feel.
I think that a lot of people feel that way. And so that's why I wanted to go back to it. I think a lot of people do feel that way, that if they have COVID and they're going to the hospital and they're going to be put on a COVID ward, then they're going to somehow get sicker or somehow not be taken care of because they're exposed to COVID. So it's almost like if you had the flu and we had a flu ward, it's not like you're going to get the flu more. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to get the flu more because you've been around flu people, or people with the flu. So I do want to make sure that that if your husband got COVID, I'm going to tell you to go to the hospital. And that's because a lot of people, our community, they are not going to the hospital and they're waiting until they are dog sick to go to the hospital. Once your dog's sick, it may be too late. With a severe case, it's too late. I mean, they can try, but if you're already needing to be intubated, then there's not an amount of steroids that's going to help. And so that's why I'm like, I wish that we're making this so political in the media. I wish that people would be talking about, hey, what do you need to come to the hospital for? Because back in the day, people are telling people just to stay home, right? Stay home unless you're really bad because we don't have any treatment. Now there are treatments that are available, but although we're exposed more, we haven't gotten that memo. I got the memo because I'm working in healthcare, but a lot of people don't know that. They still think, hey, I'm not supposed to go to the hospital unless I'm extremely severe. Anytime you have shortness of breath, you could be requiring oxygen. If you're requiring oxygen, then you are a candidate for those therapies. So if you are listening and you are short of breath and you have COVID-19, go to the hospital. And if you have new symptoms, some people don't want to get tested, right? For some reason, people are like, ignorance is bliss. No, ignorance will kill you. So get tested if you have symptoms and if you've been around somebody. And then if you have issues breathing, then go to the hospital. So Janine, if you called me and told me your husband had COVID, what should you do? I would definitely tell you, hey girl, do you have an N95 mask? And if you didn't, I would overnight you one and tell you not to go around him. I'm sorry. He's going to have to rough it out. You're going to leave a tray outside his door, until you get this N95, right? And then once you got it, yes, you could, safely take care of him and be around him. But now there's a big shortage in N95s. Once again, you cannot find them readily. So, I would ship you one, but a lot of people may not have that option. So yes, you would definitely need to make sure you wear at least some type of mask and stay away from your loved one in the house if possible. But I do know some women that are like, bye, leaving their husbands. Bye. You went to work, you called COVID, you provided for our family. I'm sorry, I can't get COVID. Bye.
I know some women like that too, Nicole. I think we both know some of the same women that are like that. Well, I would like to think that one would not catch it because I do have a friend, Nicole, but I'm glad that you cleared that up for me, because with my friend Nicole, I still probably wouldn't have just automatically gone to or taken my husband to the hospital, I probably would have been like, oh, it's okay. Like, we'll figure it out. I would have obviously, worn protective equipment and washed my hands and social distance and, as much as I can living in the same house as him. But I probably, would have then put myself at further risk for catching COVID. So I'm glad that I have a friend, Nicole.
Because other people don't have friends. Other people don't have friends, Nicole. I do want to make sure that our listeners know, like, when we say protect ourselves, like, what does that mean, right? Like, how are you protecting yourself if you don't have an N95 mask? And so the best way is, one, you wear something over your nose and your mouth. Ooh, I can't stand when people do not cover their noses. Like, you don't breathe through your nose. You breathe through your nose. Cover your nose and your mouth. And it doesn't matter if it's with a bandana, if it's with a t-shirt, if you have to cut some things up, like, cover your nose and your mouth when you're around people that have COVID. So if you're caring for a loved one at home, if you're making a mask, make sure the mask is thick, but you're not going to suffocate, and cover your nose and your mouth. And then the next best thing, if you don't have an N95, is to make sure you have some type of shield. Okay. So you can get COVID, which is respiratory spread, right? Through droplets. You can get that through your eyes even. So you have to make sure that your eyes, your nose, and your mouth are all covered. And so the best way, if you have to make something homemade, is to get you a piece of clear plastic, right? Get you a rod or some type of hanger or something that's rigid, and tape that clear plastic to that rod or something rigid. Okay. And even if you have to, like, literally make it out of a hanger, you can do that, shape that hanger, and then you hang your clear plastic from that hanger. And that's whether that's those little dividers that you get for your binders, like, those are clear plastic. So anything that is like clear plastic you can see through, like, make that and almost wear it like a headband so that it drapes from your eyes all the way down to your chin. And that way, that virus is not going to penetrate that. So if you don't have an N95 mask, you can wear a shield or make a shield to protect yourself and still cover your nose and your mouth, with a mask if you have one. And if you don't, make a mask, but don't just expose yourself to your loved one without some type of barrier protection. And you shouldn't sleep in the same bed. So if you only have a 1-bedroom apartment, guess what? Now your sick person is in your room, because you can shut that door, put a towel under the door, and you are in the living room. You have to separate from that person, and that person has to stay in their little boundaries. If you have to share a bathroom, you have to make sure you wear a mask and that shield that I just named, and clean it after each use, and try not to use it within an hour of each other. Okay. Open windows if you have a window in the bathroom. So, because COVID can live on surfaces for a couple hours. In a cardboard box, it can live for a day. So you have to make sure that you're spraying down every surface with, a 70% alcohol solution. That would be probably the easiest thing you can find right now. Lysol is like hard to come by. Lysol is like crack right now. You have to you hustle up some Lysol. But you need to make sure you're cleaning these surfaces very readily.
Okay, Nicole. Now you have told me what I need to do if my husband catches COVID. God, please don't catch COVID, okay? I have a scenario, and this is actually one of my friends. So I'm gonna try to leave out names, tell you the situation when leave out names as best I can. So I have a friend who's recently divorced, and she's the mother of 3 children, and I believe they're 12, 6, and 3. She would kill me if I don't really remember how old the kids are, but the oldest one is 12. I do know that. Her ex-husband, when they split, Nicole, he allowed his sister and her 2 grown children to move in with him because they all lived together in, less than favorable circumstances. So, he was helping out his family, and he allowed his sister and her 2 grown sons to move into his house. So it's summertime now, and according to the agreement with the divorce, it's time for the 3 kids to go visit their father. My friend and her ex, they've been awesome co-parents. They got this co-parenting thing on lock, right? So they're super amicable. There's no animosity. The relationship just kind of dissolved, right? They haven't really had any problems or things that they've had to face since the divorce. They've kind of just parted ways, but they kind of ran into a snag now that COVID-19 hit. So my friend is very concerned to the point of wanting to take legal action with sending her kids to their fathers because she feels like they are going to be unnecessarily exposed to or potentially exposed to COVID-19. And I'm going to tell you why. So her ex's sister that lives with him is a provider of care at a nursing home. And her ex's nephews, one is a transit driver, and the other, if I'm not mistaken, is in patient transport in the hospital. So they all have very forward-facing jobs that deal with the community. You know, like as we mentioned, they're jobs that are just they're necessity. You know, none of them can basically say, I'm not going to work. And they have been working through the pandemic. And, you know, they take all the precautions, and her ex is like, you know, they've built an outdoor shower, and they're, you know, they've taken the precautions that they can. But my friend still does not feel comfortable sending her children to their father's house. And, you know, I made the suggestion that maybe he come over to stay at her house for a while, but unfortunately they live a couple hours away from each other. So it would then put a financial burden on the family. So, you know, she's in a situation where she wants her children to be able to see their father. She does, you know. He's a great dad, and, you know, she loves him, but, you know, the relationship didn't work out. As we all know, kids love their parents. They want to be able to see their parents, and kids thrive in environments where they have interactions with both of their parents. So she doesn't want to take that opportunity away from them, but she also doesn't want to risk their lives. What does she do?
Ooh, that's a hard situation. I currently have a patient that has that same exact issue, that she's 30, maybe 31, 32 weeks pregnant now. She let her 16-year-old go visit his dad for a couple weeks, came back. Now she's pregnant, and she has COVID because she allowed her 16-year-old to go and visit his dad, and he came back, was an asymptomatic carrier, as most children are, and gave it to her, right? So I don't know. I mean, that's a hard situation. I think that if my husband and I were divorced and I knew that I was constantly exposed to people, I would literally, if my children were of age that I could have a conversation with them and they could understand what was going on and why, then I would not have my children come to me. I would have them stay with my husband because he was not exposed to people and he could stay and work from home. Now, everybody may not like that opinion, but me seeing COVID every single day, like, it petrifies me to even come home to my child. Now, if her kids remind me their ages. You said the oldest was 12. What's the youngest?
I believe 3.
So the 3-year-old may not understand. That's the only issue I would have, because, you know, I have a 1-year-old and he does not understand even when I try to sneak past him to go to the shower. You know, I come in my house. So my routine, I drive up. I'm usually talking on the phone. I come in my house, I spray myself it's like a laundry area that's closed off. It's like doored off, but our washer and dryer's there. So our mudroom per se. I spray myself with Lysol, and people are like, you shouldn't spray yourself with Lysol. Yeah, I spray my clothing down, and then I wipe the handles down with wipes. I take off all my clothes. I put them directly in the washer, and then I change clothes, which my mom usually leaves out, like a nightgown or a robe of some sort. And then I change clothes, open the door, go through my house to shower. And then after I shower, I then take the clothes that I changed into, so the nightgown, and I add that and the towel to the washer, right? And then I click start. Every day I do the same thing. But when I see my child, if he happens to see me sneak in, he's extremely upset. And so you don't want a 3-year-old to think that they can't see their family or their father or their mother because their mother doesn't love them or their father doesn't love them. You don't want to get, them to be so used to not seeing you because of this pandemic. So it is a very hard situation, because I initially thought to myself, if I'm going to continue to work, maybe James just stay here, the baby should sleep in his room, and then I just sleep in a room upstairs, and I just am not around my own child. Well, that's a big deal to not be around your child. I mean, you want to see your child wants to see you. You don't want to have that guilt. So I get that you want your child to be able to see their father because you want them to feel love and you want them to bond and you want them to feel supported so they won't have issues later on with neglect, right? But you also don't want them to die. You want them to be safe. And that's a really hard conversation. And if I were in that situation, I would probably have a come to Jesus with my ex-husband, meaning if you're working from home, perhaps you can come here and work from home here, and you stay in this bedroom and I stay in this bedroom. And that way, our children, we can be there to support our children. The other piece is the healthcare workers, I wouldn't be as concerned about. Like the transport people, I wouldn't be as concerned about because there's so many precautions they have to take before they transport a patient. And it's not like they're in a confined space for prolonged periods of time. I'm more concerned about people that are not in healthcare and do not have real protective equipment. And with that scenario, you got people that are in healthcare and you have people that don't have real protective equipment. So I would have to come to Jesus with my husband, ex-husband.
Yeah, I think the advice that I gave her was how, we don't know how long this is going to be, right? But we have to have some real conversations with the kids and the real conversations with the ex. And if she feels like it's a real threat, I mean, to the point of wanting to get her lawyer involved, then, follow what her gut is. Like if she, the worst guilt that you would have is allowing the children to go over there and God forbid something happened to them, then she wouldn't be able to live with herself. So take the proper precautions and, like you said, have a real come to Jesus with, the husband or the ex-husband, or maybe, I made the suggestion that maybe you allow the aunt and cousins to stay in a hotel for a little while, get them a hotel so that while the kids are there, they're not, having any interaction with them. It's just the father and the kids. And then, that way there's less risk that they'll be exposed to COVID. I don't know, but it's a real issue that we're facing. It's a real issue with, that I'm sure that a lot of people who are either recently divorced or have been divorced are facing. These are the kind of things that the pandemic has brought us that we really don't necessarily have answers to. And we're kind of figuring this out as we go along. But yeah, as you mentioned, you don't want the kids to feel, especially the younger ones, because they don't really understand. They can't understand why they're not going to school to see their friends. They really can't understand why they can't see mommy and daddy, right? So yeah. I think that you have to make sure that the children are not somehow emotionally damaged because of COVID, or try to make sure, because you never really know. You have to try to make sure that the kids are not emotionally damaged because of COVID, but you also have to make sure that they survive through it, right? So I think that making some adjustments, and it might be a financial adjustment that you have to making some adjustments in your financial situation or geographical location, just for the time being, I think might be the best suggestion. I hope that she's listening so that she comes up with some solutions.
Yeah, I hope that she is too. I just feel for people that have to make these types of decisions. And I'm just so very blessed that I don't have to make them. But it's a hard situation. But if they co-parent well, they should be able to talk and come to some agreement in terms of how they're going to see them. And then also there's always, FaceTime and Zoom and other ways that they can make sure these children are interacting with their father. Or, if it's not the whole summer, maybe it's, maybe we can, they're only 3 hours away. I mean, maybe he can see the kids every weekend at the park or, do some type of outdoors activities. Or like you said before, maybe he can move down there. And he had to adjust his work schedule. But I do think talking to those children, because children do understand more than we think they do. The 3-year-old, but I think that if you at least try to have a conversation like, daddy loves you, this is why you can't see daddy, but you're going to FaceTime him every night, every morning and every night, and make sure they continue to interact virtually, may be the best situation. And the other piece is maybe he needs to get those people out of his house. How long are you going to help family? I'm just saying, he has a auntie there, a cousin there, golly.
And they're all grown.
Listen, able-bodied people need to have their own space. It's okay to help family out temporarily. I'm okay with that. But when you're talking about for long periods of time, now you have to question whether your kids are safe around them. I'm not saying kick them out during a pandemic, but like maybe it's time to really do some soul searching. Like, how long are we going to let this actually go on? Because right now, yeah, the pandemic is here, but this like off and on thing with this pandemic and these cases rising and falling. I mean, we could be in 2021. So then you have to have a come to Jesus like, hey, all of y'all are working. You're essential. All of you can put your money together and move hell out. I'm just saying, y'all don't have to be here.
I agree. But I mean, obviously everyone is, well, I don't want to say everyone, but a lot of people are experiencing financial hardships right now, especially during the pandemic. So, I understand helping your family, but you're right. Helping them to what end? Helping your extended family at the detriment of your immediate family. It is something to think about.
There are 3 people that have jobs that you're telling me about. Those 3 people with jobs, they're still getting paid during the pandemic.
Correct.
They're not having, now if the husband needs that help financially because he's taking a cut, okay, I can understand that. Or the ex-husband. I keep saying husband, ex-husband. If he needs that help, I can understand that. But the 3 of them together could go and find housing together. Individually, you may not be able to afford a place, but together you should be able to. So I would have her come to Jesus and say, okay, let's put a timeline together to figure out what you need to get out of here and when you can get out of here. Because the 3 of y'all, maybe y'all need to room together because you're all working and you're all making some income. But either way. Janine, what have you learned new this week?
I was doing some research. There is a COVID tracking project that was founded by some members of The Atlantic, and they've actually partnered with Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research, and they came up with a tracking for Black and brown people in COVID. It's actually very helpful, and you can find it at covidtracker.com. But it's interesting because they have a statistic on their website that states that Black and brown people are dying at a 2.5% higher rate than white people. However, they do say this on the website that the research is based on the data that they've received. So some states are submitting data and some are not. However, I think that it's super dope that they've actually, done this COVID tracking project. They partnered with the Boston University Center for Anti-Racist Research, and they then felt the need or took it upon themselves, which is amazing, to document the data for Black and brown people and their contraction and or death from COVID.
Yeah, it's always nice when you actually know what's going on.
Agreed.
So, states, keep up. We need to know these things. 2 things I learned new. One of them is not brand new. The other one is that there are a lot of companies, specifically scrub companies, that are giving away free masks. So, and that's just if you register to follow them. You don't have to purchase anything, but you can get a free mask, a free reusable mask from those scrub companies if you follow them. And I haven't found any scrub companies really that are not doing that. If you're looking for a reusable mask and you don't have one, you don't know how to make one, Google some scrub companies. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we've talked about this, Janine, and I feel like we have to mention it on this episode since we're talking about COVID, is that, in some states, Black people aren't required to wear a mask.
That is very true. And let's be clear, they're not required to wear a mask. It's Black and brown people. And they're not required to wear a mask because they acknowledge that wearing a mask for a Black and brown person could be of a higher threat to their safety than contracting COVID.
It's a whole nother issue.
It is.
And that we're not going to talk through it. We're not going to do it. But I will say, if you are in those states, wear a mask. And this is one reason that you should stay home. You cannot be profiled when you are, I was going to say you can't be profiled when you're at home, but that's not true. But you are less likely to be profiled and you're less likely to come in contact with other people if you stay home. So stay home. And if you can't stay home, even if you're in one of those states, keep it low key, do what you have to do, go to the grocery store with your mask on and come back home. Even if the government tells you don't have to do it, because I have a whole other feeling about that situation. I'm not going to get into it, but I would definitely encourage you to still wear a mask.
Absolutely. Ken actually just sent me an article that came out today, as a matter of fact, from USA Today. And it says some Americans refuse to wear masks. It says rules, fines, and fees will, for not wearing masks will change that, says the experts. I mean, very honestly, I think that, yes, a fine, when you start hitting people's pockets, they'll start wearing a mask. But I mean, it's like policing speeding. Like you probably catch about 10% of the people who speed. Adding a fine to it, people are still going to do what they want, to be very honest with you. You would think that people would want to do what is best for them or what's in their best interest. As you said, some people just choose to do what they want and they choose to be ignorant.
Well, you got to realize that people are thinking they're doing what's in their best interest. The issue is people are not doing what's in the best interest of everybody else. you, Janine, if you caught COVID, you probably wouldn't get sick. Whereas somebody else, i.e. like my son that has a low neutrophil count, will get extremely sick. And so we're not thinking about other people here. And so that's not surprising. In Houston, initially when this happened, the mayor tried to impose $1,000 fine if you were caught in public without a mask. Then Abbott, our governor, came back the next day and said, nope, you don't have to wear a mask and you will not be fined. And so the mayor's hands were wide. Now, I think that having 10 to 15% of people being not compliant with the law and basically trying to bulldoze their way through life and be defiant is way better than 30 to 40%, which is what we have now in Texas, right? You still got 30 to 40%, even with Abbott now saying that he mandates masks. It's crazy. Now people are throwing stuff, cursing out cashiers and stuff like that when they tell them that they have to keep their mask on at the register. I mean, it's ridiculous. So something as simple as making sure you have a mask on before you enter the store, while you're in the store, and during checkout is very, very simple. But people are mad, even with the governor saying you have to do it. So I'm not surprised by that article at all. But we'll see. I do think a fine will help decrease the number of people that are acting ignorant out there.
Well, let's start finding them then. I feel like whatever it's going to take to get people to pay attention, take this seriously, and flatten the curve. I mean, really, we've been talking about flattening the curve since February. Can we just try? Can we put forth a concerted effort to just try to flatten this curve, please? I think I told you this earlier, Nicole, or earlier this week when we were talking. I have an approach of it like this. The same approach that I give to people who say that they don't believe in God or some sort of higher power, right? So I'm not going to tell you who to believe in or what to believe in, right? I believe in God. And I think of it like this. If I'm right and I believe in God, then we're good. But if I'm wrong, there's no harm in it, right? So if you choose not to believe in God, you risk that there is a God and that something may happen to you after you pass away, right? If you choose to believe in God, even if there isn't a God, let's just say, we're all wrong, there's no God. What's the harm? So here's the thing. You wear a mask. If you don't have to believe in the mask. If it works, great. If we're right, great. You stay alive, right? And if you choose to not wear a mask, the harm is if we are right, you're going to possibly die. So let's just err on the side of caution, right? Wear a mask, social distance, stay home when you can.
That, you know what? It makes sense. But, a lot of people, even some listening, are going to have something to say. They're going to have something to say about, them having the right to do whatever, you need to do. And, I'm not going to go into anybody's personal beliefs in terms of that. But for me, religion is very complicated and I get that. But to me, this is way less complicated. It's a mask versus not a mask. We know if both people wear a mask, not even an N95, the risk of transmission is about 1.5 to 1.7%, right? If you both wear a mask. But if one of those people doesn't wear a mask, then your risk goes up. You're talking about one person with a mask versus the other not. Now I have a 5 to 7% chance of being, of getting it unless you have on an N95. So this is not that complicated. If people just wear one, then we can stop the spread of this thing. It's still going to take some time because it takes time for you to actually get symptoms and it takes time. I mean, some people are symptomatic for weeks. So it's going to take some time to get through this. But we don't want to get through all of this and do all of this for everything to be for nothing. You don't want to do all of this and be defiant for you to look up next year and not have any family around you. So I would definitely encourage people, just wear a mask. Okay. So I know we talked about some heavy stuff today. This is your inspiration for the day. If you wear a mask, you will not catch COVID-19. Stay positive and find a hobby. We will get through this one day at a time.
Okay, guys, that's it for today.
Follow us on Instagram at Oh That's Deep BWC. That is Oh That's Deep BWC on Instagram. And we also have a Facebook page that is Oh That's Deep BWC. Until we meet again,
pray, work, slay,
and show off your melanated excellence.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, That's Deep, Black Women Conversations is produced by Nicole Lee Plenty and Janine Brunson Johnson. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Get the Oh, That's Deep, Black Women Conversation podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, or where you get your podcasts. Please subscribe and rate us. You can follow Oh That's Deep Black Women Conversations on IG at Oh That's Deep BWC. Oh That's Deep Black Women Conversations is a Mean Old Lion Media production.